Good afternoon, everyone. Before going to the next session, one important information for those delegates who have missed the morning session, you can easily access the morning session by using the YouTube link provided in your invitation mail. The program is live streaming in YouTube, so you can easily access the morning session through the YouTube. So next session start with the event animal experimentation topic on animal experimentation and ethical principle by Dr. Muthukrishnan sir. So Dr. S. Muthukrishnan sir, MPharm PhD, is currently working as Associate Professor of Pharmacology in the Department of Pharmacology at PhD College of Pharmacy. He has completed his UG, PG and under the Tamil Nadu Dr. MGR Medical University and PhD pursued from Annamalai University as a full-time research scholar. He has secured UGC BSR fellowship for his doctoral program. He has been accredited by Federation of European Laboratory Animal Science Association for course in Laboratory Animal Sciences. Also, he has won the Best Interactive Award in Scientific Session. He has published 8 national and international research publications and authored 1 book. He has teaching experience of 9 years from various colleges. His research focuses mainly on investigation of various ethnopharmacological activity using suitable animal models. His current research interests are in the areas of exploration of anti-diabetic drug from natural sources using suitable animal models with support of computer-aided drug discovery process. Let us welcome Dr. S. Muthukrishnan sir to this session. In this session, he will highlight the topic of animal experimentation part in research project writing in scientific communication.
Hello, slide is visible. Hello, Ram.
Sir, your sites are visible, sir.
So, thank you, Gobia, for a wonderful introduction. So, I can go for my topic. My topic is animal experimentation part in a research project. So, agenda of this presentation or session. So, to familiarize with the animal research and what is the need of animal experimentations, how you can justify the experimentation, and what are the different types of species you can use for the animal experimentations under the trios and 3RS, 4RS, and the 5RS principles. At last, the basics concept about the animal experimentation. So, at the end, I'm going to explain about the how you can apply the IAC application form. So in different conditions, what are the issues we are facing, how we can solve, all those things we can discuss in this session. Okay. Yeah. Why animal experimentation? Because the animal is small, we can house the large number of animals, short lifespan, so multiple generation of animal reproducibility is possible, and animals also having a capability to continuously breeding, so large number of animals we can breed for the duration of studies, easy to handle. So for this reason, we can go for the animal experimentations. And also we have evidence, plenty of research, animal research already they have done from the 16th century itself till now. So many research are going on. So that's the reason I am going for the animal experimentation. If you say like this, that's enough. That is not enough, because if you say like this, you are going to face the problems. Different protesters, particularly, you know that most of the organization like a beach, so many organizations, they are against the animal studies. So you have to justify that with the sake of reasons, with the sake what I said here, like with the sake of that reasons, I'm going for the animal research for just a piece of certificates or paper, otherwise for my pursuing my PhD. So otherwise for the funding agency, I'm going for the animal studies means that is not good. So before going to animal studies, You have to know about the basic things, the necessary of animal experimentations. You have to understand one thing. If animal experimentation it is never
Excuse
done.
me, sir. Sorry for the interruption.
Tell me,
Are you on slide share, sir? Because the first slide is visible for everybody.
Okay, I will go for each other.
You can put share slides F5.
Okay.
No, sir. Now only you are
It's
visible.
okay. It's okay.
One second. Yeah, fine, sir. Good, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So, animal experimentation. Before going for the animal experimentation, we have thorough knowledge, at least some basic knowledge about the animal studies. So, you just imagine what their protesters says. You never go for animal studies. You never go for the animal research. What will be happen? So, without animal studies, the current populations, it's may half of the population will be survived because so many vaccinations we have isolate are derived from the animal cells. Before administered to the humans, it's tested to the animals for the safety reasons. So the vaccinations is give the life. So for currently we have in COVID condition. So before 20 or 30 years back, smallpox vaccinations, polio vaccinations, so many vaccinations, TT, even common TT. So many vaccinations act as a life-saving drug. So these are the vaccinations never come without animal experimentation. So animal experimentation is very mandatory for the human welfare. That's a justification. Yeah, this is the slide. So if we stop the animal research, we will stop the real killers. So most of them, you know that in valve war, nowadays we are commonly using penicillins, but in valve war, without innovative penicillin, how many people are dying for the common sepsis conditions? So the reality, without animal experimentation, the survival is very, very tough. So nowadays, so many alternative models there, but till once the drug administered before the humans, it must be go for the preclinical trials. So you have to justify that. So once you can go for the animal experimentation means, okay, these are the reasons. For that reason, I am going for the animal experimentation. That's right. Okay. But at the same time, you know the basic knowledge, how many number of animals you are using, which species you are going to use. So how you are going to control, how you are going to maintain. So many questions are there. So for example, for the protesters or those who are against animal studies, this is a pie diagram. It's going to show the how much animals or lives is killed for food purpose. These are the data is just 5 to 10 years old data. So for food purpose itself, around 700 millions of lives has been killed. For the sake of pets or stray dogs, stray pets, so many things. How many numbers of animals has been killed? But the medical research, for the sake of medical research, when compared to food source, we are losing only 3 millions of animals. But the 3 million animals going to sacrifice it's going to produce the how many welfare for the human populations. So this is the average food consumption for the normal UK citizen. So throughout the lifespan of UK citizen now is going to for food purpose itself is going to consume 600 chickens, 30 sheep, 30 pigs, around 5 cows for throughout the lifespan. But in animal research, only the 3 mice and 1 rat for the personal consumption and 8 mice for rat for the public health. So this much of animals has been killed for food purpose. That is not a big issue. But once we are going for these animals for use the research means that's an issue. So it's a 50-50 problem. So, okay, once we can go for the animal studies, how many number, how which species are repeatedly used means mostly you can see this diagram. Mostly in animal research, they are using mice. Next one is rats. Next one is amphibians and this material. So, most of the research is done in mice only. Okay, sir. I am justifying the protesters. I am ready to do the animal experimentations. What I can do. So, you have to obey these trials. Once you are going to perform these studies, you must know the ethics. What are the ethical principles has been followed during animal studies, and what are the laws is covered, which may differ by country by country. The next one is science. In which science background, for what purpose you are going to do the animal experiments. So you have to know all the concepts. This must be obeyed the science and last and ethics. Then only you are ready to do the experimentation. Okay. Once you can get the animals, you get the approval, you are going to do the animal experimentation. Means that animal has been monitored by this of 3 members: animal veterinarian and animal in charge faculty or staffs, and each and every institute they are having an IAC. So this IAC is going to control the animal usage and permission, give the permission for the animal experimentation under as usual PA, principal investigation. So the 3 peoples, major peoples are going to contribute the animals for the animal welfare. Okay. So these are still now we are seeing the justification for the animal experimentation. What is the necessary? What is the need to do the animal experimentation? Now I am going to explain the real purpose. Why we are worried about the ethics in research project? What to consider while writing the protocol? Once we are writing the protocol, for namesake I can explain. Once we are going to pursuing a PhD, they are at least they have finally they have end with 1 animal experimentation in any other department, even from the pharmacy, it's whatever. So it's going to fulfill with only with animal experiment, whether that's really necessary. So what are the principles? 3 RS, 4 RS, 5 RS principle. What they are saying, what they are trying to say, what they are restrictive for animal research. At last, IAC, Institutional Animal Ethical Committee. What is role? What are the composition fellows are there? Why they are always restricted for the animal usage? What they want actually? At last, the international regulations, what they say about the animal experimentation. These are the things I am going to explain for the further slide. Why we are worried about ethics? Because working with the animal is a privilege, and also you are playing or you are working with lives. So, and also it's necessary to become a competent researcher. It's a fulfillment. If you are say I am a research means it's a without animal experimentation, without animal experiment, animal handling, it's never fulfilled. At the same time, you have to include the treatment of animals in human and carefully because you are playing in life. So, why we are follow the ethics? Simple statement. The unregularized freedom is too dangerous in democracy. No restriction is there. You can use how many number of animals for your studies. At the end, you have produced some results. Means what will be happen? Everybody started to doing animal studies without any regulation. So it's definitely going to impact on the life side. So at the same time, for this animal studies, we have to some regulations. So regularized dictatorship is a real democracy. So once you are going to play in the lives, we have to follow some regulations by various regulatory committees. So currently we are following this 3RS policy. Actually, this 3RS principle is introduced by the British scientist Russell and Birch. What they are said, whenever you are going for the animal experimentation, before you have to follow this 3 principles. The first one is replacement, second one is reduction, the third one is refinement. So what is replacement? Whether that animal studies is mandatory. Without animal studies, whether it's possible to change for any replacement or any method is available. For example, before 20 or 30 years before, the frag experiment is commonly it's available for the UG student. But later the CPA said the frag has been banned for the animal experimentation. So what they have done, we can go for the simulations. So replacement, the same manner, based upon your studies, whether it is a mandatory, otherwise any alternative sources, that means we can go for the replacement. The second one is reduction. Okay, no possible for the replacement animals. For your recommendation, no replacement is there. So definitely I need animals for my studies means, okay, that's all. Next, reduction. Okay, but you can get the animals, how much you want, you can, but whether it is possible to reduce the animals number size. So your purpose, you are going to evaluate some activity. You have mentioned 100 animals, means really that 100 animals is necessary. Whether it is possible to reduce means you can reduce. Then refinement. So even you can give the animals, you can follow the some refinement process. That means to avoid the animal suffering, you have maintained the animal welfare. That is third process. So these are the three principles you have to follow before you can start the animal experimentation. Okay. We have said so many things as justify the animal experiments. Then we can go for the what are the principles we have to follow, where I have to stand, all those things. Next. I'm ready. I'm going to do the animal experimentation in India. What are the act is there? So in old that is in 1960, we have a Prevention of Cruelty Act. So currently we are in CPC guidelines we have followed, and each and every institute, otherwise those who are having animal laws, they are having a IAC, that means Institutional Animal Ethics Committee. So the Institutional Animal Ethics Committee is a combination of various people, scientists, peoples, and volunteer, and a CPC nominee. It's a combination of several members. So it's going to cover the various functions. Yeah, this is the composition. So it's composed by 7 members, 1 biological scientist, 2 scientists from the different domain, and the third one is veterinarian. So in CPC, 1 veterinarian must be there, and animal house in charge. These are the 4 members we can appointed from the institute. So the remaining 3 members has been nominated by the CPCA. 1 scientist from outside the institute. They are non-scientific, socially aware member. This the person is going to torture your when you are going to present the applications. 6%. The last one is main nominee. It's nominated by the CPC. So these are the 7 members. It's a composition of IAC. What is their function? They are receive the application. You review your applications. Once you have proposed the animal ethical committee animal application form means IAC application form means they have received, then review, then they can evaluate, then they have to decide whether it is approved, otherwise they have a minor correction, otherwise rejected. So even that problem is not over there itself. Once they are given the approval, they can go for the follow procedures. So whether once you can get the approval, whether you are going to do the studies, how much animals you have taken, whether post-approval monitoring. So after get the animals, what are the things you have done with the animals? So all those things they have their functions. And last, they have submit their report to CPSC. Yeah. Still now we have seen the so many stories. So many stories. So now I can go for the outline diagram, flow diagram for the protocol process. So once you have submit the form B, CPSC form, you can go for the guidelines means you can get the form B. So once you are write the form B, it must be discussed with veterinarian. It's a better. Otherwise, pharmacologist, we can minimize the error. What are the things has been possible to remove? That all those things has been. Then you have to submit to the Institutional Animal Ethics Committee. So the IAC minimum per year, they are minimum conduct the meeting for at least 2 times. It may differ based upon the institution. So for that meeting, that you have to propose the submit your proposal. In IAC meeting, they have scrutinized your proposal. You have to present your proposal. They are asking so many questions. You have to convince them. Then you can get the approval. So once you have submit to the IAC, 2 chances there, 3 chances there. First one is no doubt, no. You have clarified all those things. Your proposal has been approved. We can start the experiment. For smaller animals, the large animals is totally different. For smaller animals, otherwise, second one is they are asking so many questions. You can't able to convince them, so they are asking for revision. So for that revision, either major revision or minor revision. So the minor revision done by the principal investigator, discussed with veterinarian. So once again, you have to submit to the IAC committee. Once they are satisfied means they will give the approval, you can start your experiment. Otherwise, still they are not satisfied means it's going to reject. Otherwise, the third chance, in first submission itself, they are rejects. Only 3 chances there for the smaller animals. If it is the larger animals, the scene is totally different. Because the IAC is capable to give the enough power to give the permissions for animal experimentation for smaller animals, like a rat, mice, guinea pigs, so many things. But it's a larger animals, the IAC is not having a power to give the permissions. They have to submit the form into CPCSA. So the CPCSA is going to decide whether the proposal is okay or not, whether they give the permission, whether they give the approval, all those things is decided by the CPCA. So this is the overall protocol process. So next we can go for the what are the problems we are normally going to face during the applications. So here I am going to explain about it, what are the questions they are asked, what we are commonly written. Once we are blankly written all those things means during a presentation, IAC presentations, we can't able to answer all their questions. So before filling the applications itself, we have to know all those things. What is the background? Why? Simply you can't write not like application form. So you know the background of each and every parameter. Based upon that, you can write the applications. Okay. So now I can go for the what are the phases, what are the issues we have commonly facing during the application writing. Otherwise, during presentation, how we can resolve all those things, I can explain with this slide. So the first one, this is a form B. The first you can explain the first 3 things as project or dissertation title and the principal investigator or research scholar, conduct details. The next one is who is to whom you are authorized for conduct the procedure for this proposal. So these are the 3 things which comes under the almost the same category. So in form B, first 1, 2, 3 category, common concerns. What the thing is that you are going to write mostly, we are given the so much of technical titles. CPC is having a commons of scientist fellows, but at the same time, the person who is a nominated for the non-scientific background. So your title must be self-explanatory. So your title must be self-explanatory form. Then conduct persons, principal investigator, and to whom you are authorized to do the experimentation. To mention the conduct details, because once you are doing the animal experimentations, if any emergency, you are just administered the drug. After that, you are monitored 3 hours or 4 hours. After that, you can come back for your home. So in case that time the animal has been having any emergency means same, it's treated like a same human emergency. For that time, we have to contact the either principal investigator, otherwise authorized person. So what the problem is there, mostly as a principal investigator or any authorized person, student, whatever it is. So there is a multiple number of phone numbers, contact numbers. One is considered for the personal, one is considered for officials. So once we are trying to reach them, the official number is never we are going to reach after office time. So that case, you can give the emergency contact number. It must be available for the all in time. So either it's a principal investigator number or student number. So this is the 3 categories. Next one is, 4th one is funding sources. You have to mention the funding sources, because from this data, they know whether the study is capable to complete, how much fund is required for to complete this project. So this fund is available for either the self-funded or any funded project from the funding agency. All those data you have to give. In 5th one is duration of project. So 4 and 5 common concerns. 4 and 5th common concerns. You have to reveal the funding sources, and in 5th, you have to explain the study period, how much duration of project is there. So you have to mention either which funding source you have been available, either DST, RDP, various funding sources. Otherwise, you have got any fellowship, JRF or SRF. Otherwise, nothing, sir. I am doing my PhD project, so I am going to self-funded. Means we can explain. So you have to mention all those things in form Part 4. The next one is duration of the project. So here most of them they have made the mistakes. What they think, they maybe they have a protocol, they have to treat the animals for 28 days. So 28 days treatment, they can, after that they have sacrificed the animals, they can go for the biochemical parameters. So what they are mentioned, the duration of project is 28 days. So it's never. So the duration of project is totally different, because even you can get the 28 animals, you can't to perform all those animals from the administration itself. It's not possible for the single stretch. So the duration of project is totally different. So those things I can explain in further slide. The at last 6. The 6 is going to deal about the your protocol. So here also same, you no need to explain for full scientific terms. You have to write the scientific background to in newspaper language, because you know that the scientific, non-scientific, socially aware member also there is the person to arise the question for all and every places. Every nook and corner is asking the questions. So your protocol is must be understand for that fellow also. At the same time, it must be satisfy the scientists also. So you have to write in scientific terms in newspaper flow. That is very mandatory. Next we can go for the animal requirements. So in part 7, you are going to give all the details, almost all the details, too much of data about the animals, which kind of species, which kind of common name, age, weight, sex, gender, number of animals, all those things you can give. So once you can go for this, fill the part 7, you must be aware about the knowledge. So this all those knowledge you can get from the, not only get from the literature survey, you have to upskill your animal science knowledge also. So better you have to discuss with the any pharmacologist or veterinarian. So before this, fill the columns. Even you can get the so much of plenty of knowledge from the literature survey. That's it. Also, it's not enough to fill this part. First, because why I'm saying is species common name. If you are going to, sir, I'm going to use the rat. Which rat? So many types of strains are available. If it is mice, also different strains are there. Rabbit, guinea pig, so many strains are available. So not only based upon literature survey, you have to choose based upon the available sources, based upon the accommodation, animal house facilities. You have to choose the animal. So that is first criteria. Next, age, weight, sex. So these are the 3 things, including gender also. Next column. It has been decided based upon what you are going to do in protocol. So age, important factor. Once you are going to do for adultery, once you are going to for the nutrition types of research, means you have to choose the pups, because you give the nutrient for the grow of the animals, so you can easily found it. At the same time, you are going to do such kind of like a diabetes. So for that category, you have to take the adult animals. So adult rat is capable to good mimic to for the human. So it produces better result. Weight also. So weight of the animals also is one of the main reasons for affect your data. So the same thing I said, nutrition research, otherwise cardiovascular problem related or obesity related studies means the weight is one of the parameter. So you have to choose the correct weight animals. That's sex. Next one is, yeah. Based upon the studies, either you have to choose male or female. So example, you have going for the conduct the study for a teratogenetic effect, means you can go for female. So at the same time, your studies has been fluctuate the hormonal imbalance. Female is whenever is going for the menstrual is going to fluctuate the hormonal fluctuation. It may affect your studies. Means that time you can go for the male. So based upon your studies, you have to choose the animal. The same thing, gender. So gender also has been decided based upon your studies. Once you can, I have mentioned here toxicity studies. Once you can go for acute toxicity studies, they are mentioned only for female animals. So based upon the studies, you have to choose the gender and animal. So next one is number to be used. Number to be used. How many number of animals you want? So what the problem is, Most of them, they are simply right, sir, I need 120 animals for my studies through my studies for 1 year. So I can do all those things. So I need 120 animals. You don't write like that. So you have to split up the animals requirements. Sir, I am going to, for each group, I am going to for 6 animals. So I am going for them the triplicates. So I have 6 samples. So mostly I need around 108 animals. For the pilot studies, also I need 12 animals because before going to the studies, I have one pilot study to avoid the error means. For that reason, I have 12 animals. So totally, I need 120 animals. Means they have you have justified that they may be satisfied with your answer. They can go for sanction the animals. So don't blindly mention the numbers. You have split up. You can add annexure. You have add the annexure sheet. You can split up the all those data. That data must be satisfy or justify your things. So the number of animals fixed are determined by the sample size. For the simple calculations based upon the standard error value or standard deviation, what you have expected. So based upon that, you can identify the n value, the sample size for each group. So based upon that, you can propose the animals. Otherwise, we can calculate the power value. So whenever they are asking why you need the 120 animals means, we can say, sir, I have calculated the power value. Based upon the power value, I can this much animals is required for better significant for statistical interpretation means that time they have satisfied with your answer, you have justified that. So based upon power value or n size, you can code the animal because the power value is it's going to give the reliability significant of your results. You can see here 6 per group means the reliability is 70 power value. If it is the same 12, each group size is 12 means the power values are almost increased 94%. So the power values is directly proportional to the sample size. So whenever you can increase the sample size, it's going to give the better power value. The power value is high means it's indicating high significant statistical. So you have to say all those things based upon this data. We can mention the numbers. Don't blindly write based upon the literature survey. Those are the article they mentioned 120 animals. So for that sake, I need 120. We never mention like that. So the next one is proposed. So sorry, number of days each animal will be housed. So the same things I have explained in yearly slide. Your study period is maybe 28 days, but the duration of project is not 28 days because even you can brought animals from the in-house. Same, your animals also is having a breeder license. They have been brought from the same animals also. You have to cage the animals. You give the time to acclimatization period. That's called as acclimatization period. So the animal will be acclimatized and you are considered into your group. That period is 7 days for in-house animals. If you brought from other animal breeders means first you have to quarantine the animals for 7 days because that breeder not maintained well. Otherwise, they are having any infection means it's going to spread out into your colonies also. So first 7 days you have allow for the quarantine. The next 7 days you can allow for the acclimatization. Then only you can allow into the your treatment protocol. Okay. Even the treatment protocol 28 days means 17, 28. So total 35 days. That's also not a project duration of project because for the understanding purpose, I can say maybe you can perform some surgical procedure. So first you can do some surgery to induce something else. Then after that you can allow for the heal. Then you can perform the experiment. Means you can't able to do the surgery for all the animals in single stretch. So surgical procedure is too tedious process. So each and every process will take a time. So for each animal, it takes plenty of time, 2 to 3 hours. So how it's possible if you are having a 20 animals or 30 animals, how is possible to done all those things in a single day? So you have to split up. You have to bring the animals for 6 animals for first month. The second group you can bring for the second animals. You can perform all those things. You have a plenty of time. So the duration of project is considered about all these parameters, not only for the study period. So most of them, they are done this mistake in here. Next, proposed source of animals. Part 7F. So I said earlier, if it is in-house animals, you have animal house, they are having a breeder license, they are also breeded. So many plenty of animals is available. Means it is simply give the farm, you can get the animals from the in-house. So for that sake, no problem at all. So you can give the farm, then utilization, then you can brought the animal, allow for the acclimatization. But if you brought for the outsource means the outsource must be approved by the CPCA breeder. So CPCA breeder license is mandatory. From that source only you can bring the animals. Once you brought the animals, you can allow for the quarantine. Because the breeder, they have to maintain all those parameters, what they are mentioned by the CPCA, they have to follow all those things. Because they have maintained the environmental control, housing of animals. So many techniques are there, individual housing, transfer housing, bedding material, so many things is there. So they have maintained all those things, which is guidelines, various guidelines. They have followed the various guidelines. Based upon that, they have maintained the animals. So if it is example, ISO guidelines means they have periodically they can go for the health monitoring for every 3 months or every month or every 6 months. They can go for periodical evaluation. Whether they are infected with any other bacteria or virus, really the animal is, the external morphology is good, but whether internally they are having any infection is there, all those things they have checked periodically. It's differ from each and every animals, mouse and rat, it's totally differ. So these are the guidelines is given by the different federations. This federation, what I have displayed here, this is comes under the FELASA recommendations. So based upon that, they have followed all the guidelines, they have done all the tests. So they have maintained the healthy animals. From those fellows, you can brought the animals. Even though you can't assure that it's not contaminated. So for that sake, you have to quarantine the animal for 1 week. So this is the part 7. So you have know the most of the knowledge or most of the discussion is coming to this part. So next one is 8. Rational of animal usage. So in 7 part, you can say all the animals, what kind of species you want, all those things. Here you have to justify that. What is the mandatory? Here, the same thing. Why the animal species, particular animal is necessary? You can't say, sir, based upon the literature survey, I can't take it. That's not a good answer. At the same time, sir, we are the expert in the studies. We have done so many things, so many diabetic studies in our lab. So we are expert. We can do routine work on this. That's also not justified. So you have to justify the rational usage of animals based upon which kind of research. So which kind of research article, which publisher, which year. So you have to enclose all those data for the justify yourself. The next one is species and strain. Yeah. So I said in the from the animal procurement itself, you have to mention which kind of species, which kind of strain. Based upon your studies, you have to choose what they are mentioned in part 7. So why mostly what the problem is, they are writing very colloquial manner. We require the mice because they are in cheap, we can easily breed, easily available, affordable price. Don't write such kind of things as in forms. So you have to explain in some professional manner. So mice are necessary because we will able to direct references. There are large number of database, we have to work it out. So we have refer so many things. So it's very suitable for our study. For that reason, I'm going to apply for this strains. You have to justify that. And also, you can add some technical terms. What are the technical terms? So we have brought the animals for inbreeding, outbreeding, random breeding. So we have brought the inbreeding animals. So it's a very homogeneous population. So it's very reproducibility is very good. So I have taken the inbreeding animals. So for to satisfaction, you have to know some basic terms, and at least you have to understand some basic terms and scientific backgrounds. And if you know the mating process means, we can explain those things also. At last, justification. How many number of animals you have taken, you have justified based upon the power value, and otherwise you can explain based upon the split up of your groups. You have to justify the research. And the same 8th part itself, you have to consider this 3RS or 4RS, 5RS principles. So how much animals is possible to replace? You have to replace or reduce the numbers. Possible to reduce means you can reduce. Refinement, how much possible to you can enrich the animals for well-being, you can give. And rehabilitation is once after the studies, animal will be survive means, otherwise no terminal method is means animal will be available. So what kind of rehabilitation you are going to with the animals, and how you can reuse, our responsibility you having for the animal welfare. All those things you have to be aware with this farm page. So pilot studies, technical terms is that before going to studies, I need this many number of animals for the, I don't want to kill all the animals. So for that purpose, I need some 12 animals for the pilot studies. During the enrichment program, during the studies, the animal has been any pain will be there means I can use this drugs, analgesic drugs to reduce the pain. Otherwise, non-invasive process, animal has been faces severe pain during the process means any other novel techniques is there, non-invasive model is available to determine this those parameters means we can implement all those things. All those things you can fill on the 8th part, justify your rational usage of animals. And last in 8th part, you have to prove that you don't repeat of research. So mostly, most of the IAC application forms has been reviewed means it's a repetition work. So if any repetition is there means you have to justify. So mostly it's not being repeated work. Even it is repeated work means you have to justify. Sir, in previous work we have done only for the basic animal studies with the biochemical parameters. So for these studies we can go for the cellular level mechanism, molecular level of mechanism we are going to explore. So for that reason we have to repeat the studies. So for the sake, you have to add some basic background data, information to share those fellows to get the easy approval process. So 8th is over. The 9th is description of procedure. So this is no alternatives is there. So you have to know the each and every part, because you can get all the animals, data, animals, all those things. How you are going to treat, which kind of drug you are going to treat, how much dose, how much amount of drug you have to administer, from which side, how much volume. So even you can go for the biochemical parameters, you can collect the blood, which means how much blood you are going to collect, from which side. So all those things you have to know the basic informations. Otherwise, better you don't know anything else means better you have to discuss with expert in pharmacology, otherwise veterinary fellows, because simply in a protocol they can mention, sir, I am going to administer the 2 ml of drug through IV in rat. It is possible in IV or even rat tail vein, it's not possible to administer 2 ml of drug in a single stretch. So this kind of error has been resolved. Better if you don't know anything in this part, better you have to discuss with any pharmacologist with plenty of research data or literature data. You have to discuss with either pharmacologist or veterinary. So no alternative for this part. So next one is 10th part. Here also the same, the repetition of work. You have to mention if any other existing studies, same kind of proposal, same kind of studies anywhere else they have done means why you have to repeat it. So you have to justify in this part 10. So in 11th, during the protocol, during the procedure, during the experimentation process, the animals is going to feel severe pain means that time you have to use the analgesics or pain relievers. Either your protocol is going to prohibit the usage of analgesics, otherwise pain reliever means you have to justify.
சரி இப்போ நீங்க ரொம்ப பாசிட்டிவா மாறிட்டு இருக்கீங்க.
Yeah. So in 11 and 12, part 1 and 11 and 12. So it's going to deal about the which kind of animals pain reliever you are going to use. The same things. During the studies, the animal may face the severe pain. So maybe you can't able to understand how much the pain is faced by the animals. So it's a not acceptable term. Simply they are said is analgesic will interfere my studies. So that reason I am not using the analgesic. It is not a considerable scientific sufficient justifications. You have to justify that which kind of work, how it's going to inhibit the analgesic. Okay, that kind of analgesic is going to inhibit your studies means what is the alternative? What is we can use for any other additional or alternative analgesic you can use. So you have to justify that. And you can't say the animal doesn't show any kind of pain, so I no need for an analgesic means that's also not appropriate justifications. because once you are administered the during the experimentation process, it may animal is going for the severe pain, so it's given a different signs. So mostly non-pharmacology fellows, otherwise those who are not familiar with the animal studies, they can't able to identify whether the animal is really going for suffer or not. So for that sake, you have better, you have to get the those parameters, get the information from the animal house in charge or veterinarian or animal handler. So that's a in part 11. So in part 12, same thing. During your studies, you have implement for any surgical procedure means, so you have to mention all entire protocol process. Entire protocol. Same how you are keep the human surgery, the same manner you have to follow the procedure. You have to explain entire details. So what is the pre-operative care? What is the post-operative care? What are the monitoring is there? How you are, where you have to do the surgery, whether it is a aseptic condition or not. Who is going to do the surgery? Whether the person is qualified, whether the person is an animal veterinarian. So plenty of data is there. So you have to give all those data. So once you go, we can go for the surgical procedure. We can give you all those data. At the same time, best practice, once we can go for a pre-operative procedure means anesthetic plan means, we can give the analgesic and pre-emetic surgical procedures. So all those things you have to follow. And the operative procedure, the same thing. So you can't explain simple lines. So I have going to insert the catheter into the internal carotid artery. I'm going to measure the hypertension or blood pressure. You don't write like this. Which animal you are going to use? What is the pre-operative procedure? Whether the food has been withheld or water will be given, what is the procedure? Which anesthesia you are going to use? How much dose? Either it's a injectable, otherwise it's a volatile anesthetics. So that's also is not enough. During surgery, you have to follow some basic process. So whether the eye is given, avoid the dryness, you can give the wetted saline and cotton, otherwise ophthalmic ointment, otherwise drops. So all those details you can given, you can justify CPC members. I'm going to do the animal experimentation surgical procedure. I am never going for the suffer the animal. So you can give all the procedure. The same manner you can give the post-operative procedure also. So once you can give the after done the surgery, you have to warm the animals. You can use the water bed. Otherwise, during the recoverization process, you can give the saline. Even after done the surgery, you can switch. You have to closely monitor the animals, at least up to wound healing process. So these are the post-operative procedure, pre-operative procedure. You can give this data means they can easily convenience. So you can know those parameters. So what the problem mostly in this case, pain-related behavior for the rodents. It's very, very difficult to understand whether the animal is really going to suffer or not. So for those cases, I have represent some pictures. So maybe those who are done in animal studies, they can see this kind of pictures. So roughed hair coat, porphyrin pigmentation, Hysteria, and henchid poster, torticollis. This is the torticollis and conjunctivitis. So these are the signs which indicate animal is in sick conditions. So most of them we have seen in this red tears. Animals is having a red tears, which indicate animals under high stress conditions. And also, if once you are going for the surgical procedure, means animals showing the this hunched posture is always going to stand on the hunched posture. It's indicate the animal is under severe pain. So that same manner, different types of signs will be produced by the animals. It's very difficult to understand by the non-scientific fellows. So these are the things. So okay, once you have done the surgery, animals suffer. What is the end? Humane endpoint. So that means nothing but once the animal is going to face severe pain, means what is the end? So you can remove the animal. Once this kind of symptoms, once hunched posture is there, the animal will be under the severe pain, means what decision you are going to take. So you have to withdraw the animal from the experimental groups. Otherwise, you can either it is possible to give any analgesic to reduce the pain. Otherwise, no chance the animal is under severe stress. We don't go for the suffer the animals, so we can go for euthanasia. So you have to decide, you have to explain all those things. You know all those things when you are going to fill this what? Sure. So these are the things is done by monitoring plan. So it must be sufficient. So this is the things. Once you have done the surgery, at least you can go for measure the 3 parameters, either respiratory rate and reflex heart rate. So at least you have to measure these 3 parameters. You can understand and monitor the animals after the surgical procedure, whether the animal is in good condition, otherwise it's not suffering surgical procedure. You have to. So at last, you have to decide human endpoints. So the same things. You can't able to relieve. You can't able to remove the animals. You can't able to give any analgesics. Animals are under severe stress or pain means you have to go for human endpoints. So what are the human endpoints? Once post-operative, post-explantation is there. Part 3. What are the things is possible? Animal may be sacrificed. That means euthanasia. Otherwise, euthanasia means, if it is euthanasia means, how you are going to dispose the carcass. If it is animal is not sacrificed, euthanasia means how you are going to rehabilitate those animals. So euthanasia method, don't write simply at the end of 6 months, we are going to collect the blood parameters. So for that, we are going to sacrifice the animals. Don't write like this. So these animals will be euthanized. You have to mention which kind of euthanasia methods you are going to involve for those animals. So here example I have mentioned barbiturate at a dose of 250 mg, but we can use the xylazine ketamine cocktail. Otherwise, inhalation anesthesia method we can go for the euthanasia. So its euthanasia method is made differ. It's based upon the different species and age, and based upon your protocol. So many euthanasia method is available. So euthanasia it means nothing but, you can use the terms. You can say it's nothing but it's induce the death with minimal or no pain or without stress for the animals. So various method, euthanasia method is we can follow. So it must be accepted by the IAAC. Pharmacological and various chemical methods is available, and physical mechanical methods also available. It's differ. It's based upon the animal species. It may differ. So once you have done the euthanasia, you have to confirm whether animal is really dead or not. So you have confirmed with the circulatory failure or respiratory failure. You can measure the body temperature. Once the animal is dead, it's, the body temperature is going to decline. So you have to confirm whether the animal is dead or not. This is the 13 part A is over. Okay, animal has been euthanized or killed. So how you are going to dispose? In olden days, they have to bury and we have follow the burial method. Later, we are going to follow the incineration. Nowadays, most of the institute they have collaborated with or tie up with the agencies. They are going to dispose the animals as per the environmental policy. Based upon the state, they can go for the disposal. Okay. Once the animal is never killed or never euthanized, you are going to do some basic experiments like CNS activity by act of photometer or skeletal muscle relaxant activity by rotator apparatus means. For those animals, no need for sacrifice procedures there. So for those cases, once you have done the experiments, the animals must be allowed into the rehabilitation process. To rehabilitate the animals to become a normal, if it is possible, you can reuse the animals also possible. So this is the part. Then 14th, part 14. This is covers the transportation process. So the same thing here also the scenario is going to differ. Once you are brought the animals, if in your same in-house, your animal is having a breed license, you can brought the animals from the same in-house means no need for internal transport, simple. If you are external transport from the animal house, you are going to transport from various places. You are going to evaluate something else is available, sources available for various places. Otherwise, you can brought the breeders from the far place means the transportation it must be done with approved manner. So you don't write, I have a own vehicle, I am going to transport the animals from the animal house into my laboratory by own vehicle, otherwise you don't write like that. Here so much of restriction is there. So I want to explain, share one experience during my PhD program. In our animal house, shortage of animals there. So we are planned to brought the animals from the Tanvas, Tamil Nadu Veterinary University. So simply my senior is going to the animals, they give all the application form and pay all those things. Sir, we can give the animals. So the fellow in charge, laboratory animal science, the doctor name is Ramesh. He said, whom I can give? I can't give that. You can arrange an air conditioner vehicle. At least you can arrange the air conditioner vehicle. Then only I can give the animals. So later you can book on the air conditioner vehicle. So for the transportation of animals from the Chennai to Chidambaram. So he is going to Chidambaram to Chennai is a local bus, but the animals must be transported into the air conditioner vehicle. So based upon the breeders, the guidelines is that once you are going to transport the animals, you have to follow the, what are the guidelines you have to follow. So the next one is transportation is over. The next column is 15th part. So this part is going to deals about the, during your studies, either you have to use the any hazards, biological hazard agents. Either it is a radionuclide, otherwise it's a microorganism or biological infectious agents, or recombinant DNA product, whatever it is. If it is a hazard product, means you have to explain all those things in part 15. So here, the same thing. If you are protocol, in your protocol, if you are using any chemical substance, it's harmful for the humans, means it's considered a hazard substance. So for those cases, you have to contact the occupational health and safety officer. You have to, from the supplier, you have to collect the safety data sheets. Based upon that, you can give the overture. That means occupational health and safety officer. You can get the clearance. Then you can do the all those studies. Till we have covered all the 15th part. So last one, this is special condition. So whenever you are doing the animal experimentations, we will give some environment enrichment is promoted. What is environment enrichment promoted? Enrichment means normally whenever you are using some kind of animals, the normal behavior is the animal is having a normal behavior. So exploration behavior, otherwise is having a biting behavior. So you have to maintain those animals in such a normal behavior. For those purpose, we can give some enrichment objects. So like cotton rolls, otherwise cubes, rollers, wooden sticks, whatever it is. So it's going to giving a animals is going to adapt or acclimate into the its behavior is a normal. So this kind of enrichment materials is giving for the better results. But this enrichment material is not mandatory based upon the studies. Maybe any psychotic behavioral studies, you can go for novel objective exploration studies. For those cases, you can give the enrichment object, means it may produce false positive results. For those cases, you avoid the enrichment objects. But apart from those studies, most of the studies we can give the enrichment objects for the easy adaptation of process. So if you are complete all those things, if you have filled the part 15 up to 15th part, you fill all those things, means finally you can give the declaration. Sir, I am going to do the all those things. You can declaration sign. Then you have to submit. So once before. So once when you are going to fill the applications, if you know all those things, means you can avoid the errors, avoid the percentage of rejection from the IAC. So once you have submit all those things, you can get the IAC certificate. You can start your work. So this is the model outline diagram. So once you can get the approval, you can keep the animals, daily clinical observations and weekly observation studies. At the end, you can go for the necropsy, collect the biological parameters, histopathology, clinical pathology interpretations, all those things you can done. But this entire protocol justification you have to given in your application form itself. If you are be thorough with all those things, you never going to stuck in any part of or any time of the your studies. But the take-home message is, whenever you can go for animal studies, you have to follow 3 RS principle or 4 RS or 5 RS. What is this? Reduction of possible means you reduce the animals, refine the animal or replacement of the animals. And if it is animal is not sacrificed, means rehabilitate the animals and Rehabilitated animals, it's possible means it's allowed to reuse. So you have to follow 3Rs or 4Rs, 5Rs principle. Okay. Sir, you said all those things. What are the background? Still, non-scientific background, science background, non-science background persons is capable to do the animal studies. Even you are belong to science background, sir, I am a pharmacy graduate, I am from graduate, I am a different departments. How we can do all those things? How we can get all those things? Means if it is possible, so once you are going to do the animal experimentation, if it is possible, before doing the animal experimentations, you have trained yourself. You are going to attend any training programs, animal handling training programs. So various agencies, various colleges, they are regularly conduct the training programs, animal handling training programs. You have to attend the training program. You know the basic things. In Tamil Nadu, authorized trainer is Chanuas, Tamil Nadu Veterinary Animal Science University. So they are periodically every year, at least before COVID. I don't know what's the current situation. Before COVID, periodically every 6 months they are conducting the training program. Every year or every 2 years they have conducted the FELASA accredited certificate programs. 15-day certificate program they have conducted. So if it is possible, you can participate those training programs. You have gained some basic knowledge, laboratory animal science knowledge. Then you can go for the animal studies. Means it's very better. Okay, you said so many things, sir, but that it's mandatory because most of the scientific breakthroughs, it comes from the mistakes. Example, sulfonamide, penicillin, ASS. So all those breakthroughs are coming out from the mistakes or errors or accidental discoveries. I want to explain on a better example that Elmer McCallum is the first person is doing a nutritional research in mice in 1908. So he never brought the animals from the authorized center. He's never brought the maintain all those enrichment program. He never maintained the animals in a specific condition. He's never in the IAC form, nothing. But he having a basic knowledge, he brought the animals from this just a simple pet store, Chicago pet store for just $6 a week. He have studied. The nutritional research is published. That's also published. Based upon nutritional research, we said the vitamin A is very mandatory. Not only he's called as a doctor vitamin. He's a person who's done the various studies. He's revealed the importance of vitamins in our life. So those research is done in animals, which is not coming from IAC, CPCA, ALA guidelines, nothing. So that kind of research also done. It's also proposed, but whether it is correct, that's a question. That is happening in 1980. No regulation is there. The same regulation we are following means each and every person they have brought the animals from the local store. They have brought in house. They can do something else, but we can't able to publish. So for that sake, we have to follow the international regulations and guidelines. We Indian citizens, we have to follow the CPC guidelines. But based upon that, entire globe they are having various regulations and guidelines available. So I have simply mentioned some guidelines as all those things. So these are the guidelines is giving the idea about the ethical procedures, what we have to adopt into the animal studies. So ALA guidelines and the FELASA, Federation of European Laboratory Animal Science and Association. For each and every country, they are having a LASA. In our India also, LASA India branch is available. So you can register yourself. You can periodically you can get the notifications. You can get upskill your knowledge. All those things you can follow the knowledge also. So universally or globally, still I can say globally we can use the OECD guidelines for the various purposes. If it's chemical substance or if it is health effects means we can go for the OECD guidelines. So these are the detailed guidelines. This has been explained to the my fellow colleague Dr. Karthikeyan is going to explain all those things in next session. So here itself I can close the session. So I hand over the session to Gopika for the questions open session. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. S. Muthukrishnan, sir, for your valuable and informative session. Next, let me invite Dr. Karthik Dhananjayan, sir, for giving the next session. Dr. Karthik Dhananjayan is currently working as Associate Professor in the Department of Pharmacology, PhD College of Pharmacy. He has completed his undergraduate in pharmacy and postgraduate in pharmacology from College of Pharmacy, Sri Ramakrishna Institute of Paramedical Sciences, Coimbatore. Dr. Karthik completed his Doctor of Philosophy in Medicine from Western Sydney University, Australia. He has 10 years of teaching experience and his research interest is on cognitive neuroscience. Let us welcome Dr. Karthik Dhananjayan to the session about animal experimentation and ethical principles to be adopted.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Muthukrishnan, for giving a valuable presentation. Here today, I am here to explain about a small presentation on prerequisite and ethical principles to be followed in behavioral research. So some of the part as completed by Dr. S. Muthukrishnan. I'll be taking some principles regarding ethical principles regarding the animal testing related to behavior research. So whatever the contents that has been provided over here is all the culmination from IUCN guidelines and policy statements on species related issues and American Association for Laboratory Animal Science and FELASA and as well as CPCSE. So what we are going to see about in this presentation is our the legislations, then the 3 R's, then choice of species and our non-animal alternatives, the number of individuals and procedures, and endangered species, procurement and transport of animals, final disposition of animals, and housing and animal care. So in all these things, we need to follow some principles so that we can carry out the behavioral research in a better way. So these every point needs I've shared the screen. You just okay. So what investigators should look for before conducting any behavioral studies? Mainly, the study has to be approved by a recognized body considered as per the law, that is a CPCSA. Then that particular institution where he or she is carrying out the experiment has to be completely approved by the Institution Animal Ethics Committee on Animal Care and Use. And most probably the investigators are completely accountable for the care and well-being of animals. And he or she should be familiarized with the legislation, that is mainly the animal welfare. And if they are using any, they should be avoiding all those animals which are endangered species. So that is what very important while conducting any behavioral studies. Then, as Dr. Muthukrishnan was explaining about the 3 Rs, that is replacement, reduction, and refinement. Whoever conducting the behavioral studies, they has to ensure appropriate animal care and use are based on the 3 guiding principles, that is a replacement, reduction, and refinement. This has to be taken into account. And behavioral studies also needs optimum number of animals. This is because we need to achieve a statistical value where it is appropriate. And we need also attention to focus on the consideration of 3 Rs. So that is very important when we do any behavioral studies. Then investigators also should, next when we focus on the choice and species, what we use. Mainly the investigators has to focus on what type of species they are going to select and what kind of strain they are going to select, whether they are going to take a rodent or they're going to take a non-rodent. So what is appropriate for the investigation? So based upon that investigation, the ethics has to be followed appropriately. So the knowledge of animals, individual animals' previous experience is also very, very important, because an expertise who is very well aware of the animal behavior can select appropriate animal for the study. That is what very important whenever we do the behavioral research. And then the genetic characterization of laboratory animals, because nowadays what happens, the use of genetic animals is getting increased. That's most probably the transgenic animals use of increasing. For example, if I want to work on an obesity related study, I have to take some transgenic animal which is spontaneously gets obese. So that kind of animals, when we take the animals when it is in-house, we have to be carefully select the species. That is what very, very important. Then the special characteristic what I'm looking for, that is also has some the specialist characteristics what I'm looking for, the genetically altered strain. For example, if I am altering any if I'm doing any mutation which is responsible for obesity, so I have to be very careful whether if I do that alteration, whether some behavioral activity will be affected or not. So that is what very, very important. In non-modified animals, it's not a big problem, but it poses problems in animals when genetically we alter the strains. Not all the animal will be responding the behavioral studies equally. There won't be any equivalent response for all animals, because genetic animals somewhat difference will be there when we do behavioral studies. And one more thing, when we do research, it is of a different criteria, but when we get into the teaching that involves procedure of housing animals, which may cause pain or discomfort or stress to the animal, we should also move to some alternative strains. That is also one of the consideration we have to taken into account. So where we have to minimally, we have to reduce the pain or distress, that brings about the effective outcome in all the behavioral studies, because animals are so sensitive for any kind of human behavior. So whenever we doing a research or teaching for demonstration purpose, whatever the procedure we carry on, that should not cause pain, discomfort to the animals. Then next we move into the why we should do comply with this 3 Rs. When mainly the number of individuals, So next we move into the number of individuals. So in compliance with the principle of 3 Rs, that is reduction, refinement, and replacement, where we should use the minimum number of animals necessary to test any type of behavioral studies, and that should be without the loss of any scientific rigor, because what we expecting that should not be reduced because of these 3 Rs. That also we have to take into account. And it's not only for procedure or treatments, whatever we do, it is not only the procedure or treatments, whatever we do, it is also for non-invasive experiments to ensure limited limited impact upon the subjects. So before taking into any consideration, we have to do some pilot studies. If we have some pilot studies and we can know that because of this, the number of animals can be reduced, then thereby we can compromise the research objective. That is what one thing, before starting a vast study, we can go into a pilot study and we can reduce the number of animals for the main studies. And one more thing, as Dr. Muthukrishnan was emphasizing about the power value. So whenever we start any studies related to behavioral research, mainly we should consider the animals what we are using. That should not be used as a vague one. We should not take it as a blind one. It has to come from some statistical value. So for that, we can use the power analysis of pilot data, and we can calculate the lowest number of animals which is necessary. Okay, to obtain meaningful scientific data. So this is where we need the number of individual animals, how we can select is lying on. Then if we don't have the pilot data, the absence of pilot data, then how we can determine the sample sizes? Because for example, your research and somebody would have done that particular research, and both are looking at the field of research is the same. For example, you are carrying out a diabetes study, and he also have been carried out particular diabetes study, and you coming to know that you're just changing only the drug samples. So at the time, you can use the same sample size if your animal is also the same. So you should have some pilot data. With that, you can have some determination that I will be using this type of this amount of animals. So that is what we have to focus mainly when we select the number of individuals. And the researcher, whoever it is involved there, they should do some preliminary statistical analysis, and he should know whether he can add the animals or not. So based upon the statistical analysis, thereby he can bring out a complete he can wear out the problems in number of individual animals what they are using. Then whatever the experimental design they are doing, that experimental design should be a robust one, because the robust experimental design and data analysis are very, very vital. Because when you finish a study, whatever the animals you used, the behavioral data comes only from the animals, how many number of animals you have used, because individual variations will be there definitely. Animals to animal individual variation will be there, and the standard deviation will also be more. So it is very, very important. First of all, we have to train the animals and to limit all those individual variation. And one more thing, we should not use very few animals. For example, 3 animals or 2 animals. This is very, very that will give you a statistically irrelevant data, because individual variations are there. So that if you use 6 to 8 animals, that will give you most probably data that will fit into your expected values and nominal values. So this is what very important. That is what the whenever you go for any kind of a study, or when you're submitting a manuscript to any kind of a journal, the reviewer most probably they will be looking for the number of animals they have used, whether the statistical data is appropriate or not. And it is more than 5 is what they suggested, and it's more to derive that kind of problem, to overcome that kind of problems. First of all, we have to go for all those power analysis and come with a conclusion to which should not affect our behavioral studies. Then genetically modified animals. So when we use genetically modified animals, there also a problem arises. It's not a problem. The thing is, because they are genetically modified animals, they are not like other animals. We should be very careful about the ethical and welfare problem associated with their use, because genetic animals, some of the animals may be more sensitive. For example, when we use any animals where the pro-inflammatory cytokines are increasing in their body. So those animals are more exposed to some kind of autoimmune disorders. So in that case, what we have to do, we have to keep in a controlled condition. That is also mainly important. And large number of animals that use pre-experimental production phase. For example, if we breeding the animals, genetically modified animals, that also be carefully consideration has to be taken for the welfare of the animals, because the genetic modification itself lead to detrimental altered phenotype. So that is also possible because they are already genetically modified. If we are not taking care of their welfare, what happens if you are not using properly or not breeding properly or housing properly, that will lead into changes in the phenotype. Then most probably that will affect our behavioral studies. That is what very important when we focus on genetically modified animals. Then when we look into the other aspect, then investigators should also discuss with the experts both the scientific value of their research and as well the research proposal. These are the prerequisites. They have to go and they have to discuss with the experts before starting any kind of research, behavioral studies, because some behavioral studies will give you some errors which we can overcome. It is not that to overcome, we can minimize the errors, and possible animal welfare consideration has to also be taken out. Then if procedure used in research or teaching involve exposure to painful, stressful or noxious stimuli, the investigator must consider whether the knowledge that may be gained is justified. So this is what very important in the behavioral research, whether it's a research or a teaching, we have to be very we have to give some consideration over here. The thing is, the animals, most probably in behavioral studies, repeatedly, if we do any painful, stressful or noxious stimuli, the behavioral characteristics, what we are expecting will be definitely will be getting deteriorated, because the animal will be more, it will be more suffocated, and it gives you the more error will be there in the data. So that is what the animals which the procedure which involve painful, stressful or noxious stimuli should be reduced. And the investigator must also consider whether the knowledge that may be gained is justified or not, because you have to justify, if I do this procedure, this particular procedure is definitely needed for my study. Without this procedure, I cannot do that particular I cannot see the expected outcome. So he has to justify. So first of all, you have to say that ethically I'm doing this particular thing, and the goal of the research should be achieved only if I do this painful procedure or any stressful procedure or noxious stimuli. And that noxious stimuli or painful procedure or stressful procedure, that should be a limited one. It should not affect the behavioral of the animal. And as well, this is what I have said. It should not be unpleasant, and whatever the behavioral activities we doing, and that should be pleasurable for the animal as well. And one more thing, what should not be adequate justification? What are not adequate justification? The animals are experiencing the similar stimuli in the wild, so that is adequate, that is not adequate justification. And because of economic savings, this is very it is not cost effective. It saves the economy. That is less cost of using this particular behavioral study. I'm going for this particular behavioral test. So that is completely not adequate justification. And as well, the convenience, this is easy for me, that's why I'm doing. So that is also a not adequate justification. Our justification should lie on, while I'm using this particular painful, stressful or noxious stimuli, the animal will not be undergoing much suffocation. That is what mainly we look for. Then procedures. So procedure is what during the duration of the entire project, we will be carrying out so many procedures will be there. So all those procedures, what we do has to taken into account. So if we do a procedure, for example, a surgery, for example, any type of surgery, if we do, after that particular surgery, for example, I am ligating a femoral artery, for example. So after then, whether this procedure will cause a distress for the animal or not, that I should know. If that is happening, what is my alternative procedures, what I should do? So that is also we should be taken into account, because these are ethical concerns, because the animal has to be, the animal should not suffer from excessive suffocations. So it should, the pain or suffering should be minimized both in duration and as well as in the magnitude. So that is also very important. And once the procedure has been completed, I'll be keeping the animals in particular cage. So housing or management procedure. At the time also, the animal should not have much stress or anxiety and fear. So in that way, if the animal has been, procedure has been completed, the animal, each and every animal has to be kept in separate cages. That is what very, very important. So that may induce a state of stress, anxiety, and fear in the animals. So we also have to be taken into consideration of animal welfare and as well as the scientific validity. That is what very, very important. Then when we focus on the conditions, for example, if we do any procedure, whether that particular procedure is a short term or a long term, if the short term procedure, but it should be a low intensity pain and low intensity discomfort or distress, it should be there. It should not be a long term procedure, and it should not produce high intensity pain, and it should not cause discomfort and distress as well. So one thing is what we have to give anesthesia, and if you want to give any analgesics, you can give it, and we can reduce the animal will be going into an unconscious state, and thereby you can do some procedures, any type of surgical procedures where animal will not feel that particular discomfort. So if you do any analgesic or anesthesia, and also you should keep it in mind that whatever the analgesics or anesthesia if you're giving, that should not affect your study, your behavioral or the behavioral studies, the outcome of your behavioral studies. So that is what very, very important. That's what it is, that unless this would jeopardize the ends of the study. So that is what very, very important. Whatever the analgesics you can use, anesthetic you can use, the anesthetic and analgesic what has been said by the guidelines can be used, but one thing is that should not affect your behavioral research. Okay, so appropriate use of analgesic and anesthetics is very, very important, and it has to be maintained throughout the study. You should not use one particular anesthetic for one animal, the another anesthetic for another animal. It should not be done like the way. It should be whatever the analgesic and anesthetic you are using, that has to be used completely for all the animals throughout the study what you're doing. Then appropriate procedural training of animals has to be given. So thereby you can get the expected outcome, whatever we do will be achieved. Then discomfort other than nociception. Normally the pain, other than the pain, the animals can also have some discomfort because of we are giving the anesthetics. So it may produce nausea, and because of the animals, if any surgery is done, if it is not properly maintained in the cage, it may cause pruritus and as well as their body temperature. And once you do the surgery, the animals will be kept in the isolation. Most probably any type of wound healing animals will be kept in the isolation part. So that social isolation will be there for the animals. That itself change its behavior as well. And fear should also be considered. Social isolation and fear should also be considered. So these are the things. And many of this can be alleviated or prevented by medication. So whatever if you expect this particular drug I'm giving, so that animals will be producing nausea, pruritus, thermal stress, social isolation, or fear, you can give some medicines, but whatever the medication, if you give before the study, that particular medication should not affect your main study. That is what we have to focus mainly. Okay, then, so yeah, I'm doing all those during the time of study, during the type of study, I have to look into the field work, what I'm doing. And you have to see the type of aggression and predation and intraspecific killing of the animals. And as well as when we do some procedures, like aversive stimulation and deprivation and motivational procedures, animals' behavior will be getting altered. So that also has to be taken into consideration. Then social deprivation, isolation, and crowding, that will also has to be taken into consideration, and deleterious conditions. So these will be seen in the forthcoming slides. So the field studies, most probably whether your study is of observational or experimental, but it is potentially disrupting the subjects. So you have to be very, very careful. Normally, when an animal is free living, it is not exposed to any kind of surgery, it is not exposed to any kind of injection, any kind of oral administration or nothing. The animals are free living. So whenever we procure the animals, we should be very precaution about to minimize the imposition of fear to the animal and distress, and as well as lasting harm. So the animal should not experience more fear, distress, and as well as the harm throughout the behavioral studies. This is what very, very important whenever we quarantine the animals, from when we procure and quarantine the animals. This is very, very important. And how this can be minimized. So most probably when you see, instead of using invasive techniques, we can use invasive techniques, but minimal, considering minimal invasive techniques, and we can go for a non-invasive techniques for monitoring the physiology, and as well as for identifying individuals instead of invasive tissue sampling and marking. So we can come to know, we can see the phenotypic features by using we can see the phenotypic features, and as well as you can see the genetic markers. Instead of going for blood samples or tissue samples, you can isolate we can take the feces and we can analyze the genetic markers. That is also possible. And one thing where we can reduce the invasive tissue sampling. And then pilot studies, as I said before, we can go for pilot studies where we can use minimal effective dose of chemicals, and we can justify the procedure that the pilot study has been done before, so there is no any problem for the animals, and thereby I'm using this particular chemical at this particular dose. So you don't want to justify why you don't want to justify what is the rationale behind this particular dose. And during the time of study, this is what very, very important in behavioral studies. During the time of behavioral studies, this is also one of the important criteria, where if the animal is undergoing any distress, or if this animal is under pregnancy, or it is having some weaning. So at the time, what we do, we have to remove the animals. The animals has to be removed, and their offspring has also to be separated. So this is what very, very important. So if any distress is happening, the animal should be removed from the study, and it has to be euthanized, and it has to be sacrificed, because the animal should not feel the noxious environment. Right. Then whenever the animals, we are treating the animals. So either the animals will be there under the treatment, or the animals will be placed as control animals. So most of the animals will be having the capacity to be aggressive, and they are predatory, and sometimes there will be non-specific killing will be there. So the conditions in which animals are kept may influence the rates of intraspecific aggression and killing. So this is one of the problem, where there will be the reduction in number of animals during the time of behavioral studies, where most of the people, most of the researchers, they will be taking into account their errors. So it is most probably that leads to some of the errors. And periodically we have to clean out the cages we have to clean out the cages, and cleaning out the cages at the wrong time can also prompt infanticide in rodents. So if you clean the cages at the wrong time, what happens? It prompts the infanticide in rodents. In the sense, if the pregnant animals is there, and if we are cleaning the cages at wrong time, what happens? The animal will be getting feared. It will be feared, and it feels discomfort, and that may lead to infanticide. That is also very, very important before whenever we are carrying out the behavioral studies. Then natural encounters should be used in preference to staged encounters. Staged encounters has to be avoided. Most probably, natural encounters is what very, very is mostly we have to do. And in teaching, mostly staging encounters is necessary. For example, if you want to show anything to the students regarding some procedure or everything, we can use of some models or video film playback should be considered instead of showing the real encounters. Right. Then we'll move into the aversive stimulation, deprivation, or restrictional motivational procedures. So what happens there? If we give any aversive stimulation or deprivation or restriction, which is necessary for the study, at that time, we also be careful about the pain and distress to the animals. So here, the main thing is to minimize the suffering. If you have any alternative reward strategy that could be used to motivate the animal in the study, then we can use that. Most probably, when in the previous presentation, Muthukrishnan have shown some materials where for enrichment, environmental enrichment, right? So it is also one kind of alternative reward. So where the animal feels somewhat rewards for whatever the study what we doing. If any stimulation is done, then we give food, then the animal will be feeling somewhat comfortable. That is a kind of different study, the different behavioral studies. But here what I'm saying is the alternative reward, if it is not available, ensure this particular ASDR procedure, that is the aversive stimulation, deprivation, and restriction, you need definitely, but it should not be greater than necessary to achieve the goals of the achievement. That is what very important we have to focus for, because this is necessary for your procedure, but it should not affect the animals. It should not make it discomfort. That is what very important. And one more thing, when you give any aversive stimuli and deprivation strategies, the acceptance of the food by the animals is a very important thing. You should give foods which are use of highly preferred foods and other rewards that may motivate even satiated animals. That should be preferred. And then positive training regime should be considered before the use of aversive stimulation or deprivation. Right. Then how the social deprivation and crowding and isolation and crowding, that will affect the behavioral studies in the sense, because social deprivation is most probably, you can say the behavioral studies are done individually, but one thing is the animal will be getting depressed whenever we do social deprivation and as well as isolation. But in crowding, it will be of a different case. In crowding, it will be of a different case. So the experimental design, whatever extremely stressful to the animals, that will adversely affect the that will adversely impact the behaviors. So which require keeping an animals in overcrowded condition. For example, for one study, you can keep the animal in overcrowded condition, but that's not can be done for the other animal. For example, that's to study the psychiatric or neurodevelopmental conditions. We have to keep the animals in isolation condition. It is very necessary. So where we can develop and we can maintain the particular neurodevelopmental and as well as psychiatric frequencies in a balanced manner. If we keep in crowded condition or in a grouped cages, what happens? The animal to animal killing will be there. So it will be some it will get fighted and it will be getting died. So that is where the social isolation, where we have to consider that it should be there. And the degree of stress experienced by individual animal can all be vary with species, age, sex, and reproductive condition, and developmental history, and social status, and natural social behavior of the animals concerned. And the previous social experience must be also be considered to minimize the such stress. Then deleterious conditions. In some condition, we'll do surgery, and as well as to induce a disease. We have an experimental design where I will induce a disease. And for example, if I want to increase the parasitic loads, and if I am exposing the animal to pesticide or any other environmental stresses, so all these are deleterious conditions. So here, the main thing is we have to take into special care has to be given, should be taken into the studies involving genetically altered animals as well. So in these kind of animals, what happens? While inducing disease, almost the animal is under disease condition, like a diseased patient. So the animals has to be observed daily, and it has to be observed frequently for its water and its eating behavior, everything. Because those kind of things, if it affects, that will also affect our biochemical parameters as well. And if you are correlating your behavioral study with biochemical parameters, totally that will be getting affected if any of the daily activities is getting deranged. So that is also has to be taken into account. Then mainly the special care should be taken for should be given for studies involving genetically altered animals, because these animals are mostly transgenic animals, or they are with some specific mutations. So there we should compromise the welfare as well. There should also be compromised the welfare as well. And if any procedure, for example, if you induce any disease and after then the animal has to come back, we have to give some alleviation procedure. For example, the possible treatment or alleviation procedure should also be included, because during the time of study, what happens, because of inducing the disease, the animals will be getting died. You most probably everyone have encountered those who are doing diabetes studies. If you use a streptozotocin, most probably the animals will be getting some of the animals will be getting died because of the dose. So one suggestion was came in between, they can give some oxidative free radical scavengers like nicotinamide. So likewise, whenever we induce a disease, we can do some alleviation procedure. It is an ethical type of treatment. So where we can reduce the mortality of the animals. Then endangered species. This is what one of the things regarding the ethical principles while concerning the animal behavioral studies. So we should not use any endangered species or locally rare species for our behavioral studies. So country to country, this varies. In US, some animals will not be used in the study. In India, some animals will not be used in the studies. So where we should not use the animals which are endangered. So we have to keep in account that the animals which are threatened species should also be not be placed, because they are under conservation. They are under conservation. So we should not include those animals in our study. Then, for example, if you procure and keep the animals, endangered species, for example, observing alone is a serious disturbance for those animals, because there will be of increased predation rates will be there, and we should take much more careful consideration of techniques, and of we should go for some alternative species. That is what very, very important when we use the endangered species. Right. Then procurement of animals. We have to get all those animals from only from the reputable breeders and suppliers. The animals should not be get from the unauthorized breeders and suppliers. So where this will affect definitely your behavioral studies, because those who don't have the history of animals, the breeding of the animals, will be giving inappropriate phenotypes, and as well we can get some alterations in age wise, and as well as in sex wise as well. So we'd be very careful regarding getting the animal from reputable breeders and suppliers. And one more thing, when we see here, all these procurement, when you do this procurement in wild, for example, if you get from animals from wild, there also you should comply with the relevant legislation. So like that particular procurement procedure should minimize the pain, distress, and suffering. So this is what very important. And should not support, nowhere you should not support trapping or trapping animals. You should not get the animals from those who are doing trapping. So that should not be done. And procurement practices should not create a local market for culling wildlife for profit. So that is also one important thing. Then all animals procured should be provided with adequate food, water, ventilation, space, and protected from waste. This is very, very important. Then housing. So the caging conditions and husbandry practices must meet at least minimal recommended requirements as per guidelines. Because if the housing is improper, whatever you do, the behavioral study will definitely affect. The animals, when we look for cognitive studies, or when we are looking for any kind of social interaction studies, definitely the caging condition probably affect the behavioral studies. And whenever companion is needed, wherever possible, there we have to keep the animal. But sometimes companion animals should not be kept together to avoid suffering or injury. So that is where we have to carefully take into consideration. Then frequency of cage cleaning should be there. Thereby we can minimize the amount of stress imposed by frequent handling and exposure to unfamiliar surroundings, odors, and bedding. This is then if animals are distributed, and care must be taken to ensure that same animals are not repeatedly in stressful or painful experiments, and that they continue to receive high standard of care. So the animals, how we can dispose the animals, that is what very important, how we can dispose. So if you do any kind of studies, that at last the animal has to be get euthanized, and it has to be sacrificed, and it has to be thrown out. So for example, here if animals are killed by subsequent to a study, this should be done as humanly and painlessly. It should not give we should not be aggressive in doing cervical dislocation and giving and taking out the isolating the brain or any kind of tissues. It should not be there. So mainly it should be a humanly and it should be painlessly. So that is what euthanasia. So there is whatever the euthanasia technique what we are using, that should be done as per the guidelines what they are following in their appropriate country. For example, here in India, we're following CPCA guidelines. So as per the CPCA guidelines, we should do euthanasia, and thereby we can sacrifice the animal. And one more thing, those animals involved in behavioral studies, we should not do the euthanasia in the vicinity of the other animals. That will definitely affect the behavioral studies of the other animals. Some animals will not be going into the euthanasia. If you keep that animals near to the animals which you are doing euthanasia, definitely these animals will feel discomfort and distress. And if you do the next study, if you take the animal for any behavioral study from that particular cage, this animal will definitely not perform properly. The animals will be fearing, and it will defecate and it will urinate, and it will not give you the proper outcome. And whatever the carcasses of rodents killed with lethal anesthetics or other toxic substances should be disposed in a proper manner. That would prevent scavengers from suffering secondary toxicity. So this is where we should very keen in looking into all those aspects before carrying out any behavioral studies. So these are all common procedures, but this procedure has to be, each and everything has to be taken into account. If we are losing 1 in 2, it's not a problem. But if it is going beyond the limit, definitely that will affect the behavioral studies. So this is what regarding the ethical principles, what I can say regarding the principles can be followed in behavioral research. Thank you for your patience on hearing my seminar. Thank you.
So participants, now the session is open for questions. If you have any question, you can raise or you can post it in the chat box. So if there is no question, and we can wind up the session, over to you, Gopika.
So, right, Gopika.
Hi, hello. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, Gopika.
Okay.
Can
So
you close, right? Can you close this share screen?
I'm sorry for the interruption.
Gopika, you can stop the
Stop
share.
sharing.
Share.
Okay, sir. Sure, sir. Sure, sir. Okay. Okay. Thank you, sir, Karthik, sir, for the informative session. Today, let us wind up with this. And before
Gopika,
that, an
wait,
important
Gopika.
notice. Hello.
Gopika, wait a minute, sir.
Okay.
So before the conclude ceremony, I want to share. First of all, I want to thank this program convener, Ramanathan sir, and coordinator Ram Praveen Kumar and Deepthi Madam for the wonderful coordination, and also the members who was working in backend, like being Gopika, Kritiya, for a wonderful cooperation and wonderful coordination. So I thank all of them with the wonderful opportunity to share us, both of us, myself and Karthik sir, to share their experience with this relevant topic. Thank you. So I will hand out the session to Gobiya. Gobiya, you can go.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Muthukrishnan sir, for your words. And once again, thank you, Karthik sir and Muthukrishnan sir, for the informative session you had provided. One important information for those delegates who are joining tomorrow, please enter with your name which has been registered in the Google form. That means the name that you had given for registering in the refresher program. With that name only you have to join, because attendance is mandatory for issuing the certificates. So note that you are joining with the same name itself. So before that, delegates, thank you all. Thank you all speakers and delegates for your kind participation and cooperation. So let us meet and rejoin for tomorrow's session at 9:30 a.m. sharp 9:30 a.m. tomorrow. Thank you all.